Thanks for joining, of course. I think you will know me, but just for the recording of something else. Hi, I'm Nigel Biswas-Baldwin, co-founder of Phraktion, joined by my other co-founder today, Paul Reynolds. Hi, Paul. Delighted to introduce today's speaker, Ross Jackson. You can see there, I hope. And Ross is going to talk about why clinical trials miss their milestones and how AI, a good friend AI, is starting to influence which trials get selected. Literally, as it comes to patient recruitment, Ross has literally written the book on this one. So we have the most excellent speaker in this space, really looking at the challenges around clinical trials recruitment and retention. It's been a underlying theme for the last, dare I say, 30 years of my career in whether in clinical development, medical affairs. Everything often comes back to clinical trial recruitment. Everything drives off that. Successful clinical trial delivery leading to good commercial uh, uh, t- timelines and delivery. So really everything underpins by patient recruitment, Ross, and you're going to take us through the journey in your experience. So over to you, Ross. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. So yes, I've been doing this for a while, written a couple of books about it, as Nigel said. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through this a slightly new twist on what I normally do. So I normally outline the issues of patient recruitment and how to potentially make them better. Previously, it would have been things like this is what normally happens. Then we usually get to rescue, and then I get brought in to make things right. I've done it slightly differently because over the last few years, you may have heard of something called AI. Doesn't crop up in conversation very much. Actually, it crops up all the time, doesn't it? But I approach it from a slightly different way. Um, so this session is going to be about patient recruitment, etc. But it's not about new tools. It's not about new AI platforms or futuristic things. It's about how people are already using AI every day anyway. I use ChatGPT and things like that all the time. I was in plenty of Ubers recently where I've been told the drivers don't use Google anymore. They only use, well, their favorite, usually ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. And that's where I'm coming from. So I've revised my thinking. I've written quite a few articles recently, published online about what people are actually doing with the AI they use every day that can help us in the field of clinical trials to improve patient recruitment. Um, that's where we're going to go. So I will start off. I can actually only see myself here, so I'm thinking weirdly I could see everyone else now. I can only see myself. So if we save the questions to the end, if anyone's got any, then I'm sure Nigel will talk me through them. So let's go on. So patient recruitment, as we all know, big problem. It's been a big problem for a long time in the industry, not going away. It always amazes me how such a well-funded industry with so many clever people in it still can't solve this. I got into it many years ago actually from a marketing background. I didn't have a clinical background. But I started looking at it from a customer customer focus sort of thing, sort of patients are what we're trying to attract. So how do we attract patients into trials? I always use the analogy that people queue up to get into the Apple store. We don't have people queuing up to get into trials. So let's try and get these two things nearer together. And that's where I think I've been successful with it. My approach is about, yeah, we can't necessarily change the science, but we can change the approach of how we present it to people and how people are attracted to take part. And AI it's not going to be a fundamental part of how people do that now. It already is. It's already there. People are already using AI for all sorts of things. So let's get started. So the old problems of patient recruitment haven't disappeared. There's always lack of awareness that there are such things as clinical trials, lack of access, which maybe there are multiple reasons for that, but it could be, you can't get there for a physical location. It could be that it's not open at the right time. It could be you can't, leave your children somewhere. There's all sorts of things about lack of access, lack of clarity. People don't understand what clinical trials are. I think we, as an industry, we missed a trick 5, 6 years ago because the whole world knew there was a clinical trial, and we didn't really parlay that into, oh, great, let's let's get everybody interested in clinical trials for other things. Lack of confidence is about, people are not, what do they trust whether it's going to work or not? And the lack of follow through is more of an industry thing. Do we actually follow up well enough with the people who might be interested in taking part in trials? And AI adds another layer. It reveals to people whether the trial is clear, credible, understandable, and whether it's attractive enough for them to want to take part. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. The fundamentals of patient recruitment. This is where I tend to go, right, this is what we need to do. You need to, this is from the industry side, this is what we need to do. We need to find the patients, fish where the fish are. Let's try and find out where these patients might be who will fit into our trial. Engage them. We want them to raise their hand and say, I'm interested in this trial. Qualify, they have to fit the eligibility criteria. We consent them to, be pre-screened and screened. Patient has to consent to taking part, and we retain them in the trial. Retention is often seen as something separate to recruitment, but I've always thought it's the same. It's one of the pillars because it's a double effect. If somebody dropped out of a trial, you can't use their information, so you've lost that, and you've also lost somebody on the trial. So you need to get someone else in. So it is a recruitment issue. So these are the 5 general pillars. I think what's changed about it really with AI, it gives us and potential participants a new way to interrogate these things. I suggest that what we're doing with AI, we're actually interrogating it when you use ChatGPT or Claude. You go in, you ask a question, it comes back. You ask another question. You're drilling down all the time, more and more, in a way that you wouldn't do with Google. Whereas now, you might never leave ChatGPT, whichever one you're using. You just get that to answer all your questions for you, and then think, yeah, that's good, or no, I don't want to do it. So this is where the interrogation side of it comes in. People are doing this now, and we can use the same approach to try and get them interested in trials. This is because what AI does, what the generative AI chatbots do, they compress that scrutiny. So all the information that people might want to know, where they would click on Google and go to a website. Maybe there's an FAQs page they will look at if people ever do look at FAQs pages. Now they won't. They'll just go ChatGPT, and they're not doing this. People are already just thinking, right, tell me more about this, tell me more about this, tell me more about this. What about that? Will it fit my lifestyle, etc.? There's there's a much more of a compressed, in terms of where you access it, bit of information. And patients are comparing this. When I say they're comparing the trials faster, it's not necessarily comparing one trial with another trial. It's comparing trial participation with what else they might be doing. So it's okay, let me find out, would I rather be sitting on the sofa than taking part in a clinical trial? These are the sort of things, but all the questions will come up. And if it's not clear or it looks too onerous, it will put people off. On the other side of it, the sites themselves who are looking to take part, can I operate this trial easily enough? Yeah, you can assess whether it's the right trial for you. So sponsors who are looking to get sites to work on their trial, you have to be quite clear about what's involved and to avoid some problems down the line and to attract the sites in the first place. The messaging, the communications, it's very easy for AI to show up what's bad, what's weak, because it just comes there. Claude will identify the information and come back and synthesize it. And the person reading it will think, oh, right, well, if that doesn't fit what I want it to be, I'm not interested. Especially if it's confusing. This is what happens with AI chat systems. If it's confusing, they'll try and make sense of it, which means they might get it wrong, or they just ignore it and they don't use the confusing bit. So what AI is doing is it's changing the information around environment around clinical trials as a whole, but also specifically in terms of recruitment and how to get people interested in taking part. So when I look at each of the 5 pillars that I've outlined, how previously we might be looking at how does the industry find the people, say, now it's, okay, we found them, well, what happens then? What do they do? So finding, can the right patients and sites discover the trial? Traditionally, the CRO might get some sites involved. The sites would search their database. Have we got patients who fit the criteria? Great. There might be some advertising. You might reach out to a patient group. These are the sort of things that people do to find the patients. Once that step's happened, though, the patients now are finding out for themselves, trying to discover more about it. So they'll go to ChatGPT and say, seen an advert for this trial, or my doctor's told me about this trial. ChatGPT does know nothing about it. It's automatically a black mark against that for the person who might take part. If they do find it and they think, right, well, okay, is it clear enough? Does AI understand who it's for? So if I would go into it and say, right, I'm XYZ, this age, this background, I've got this condition. Is this trial right for me? And if the information isn't clear enough and it doesn't actually suggest that an AI synthesizes it wrongly or differently, again, you've probably lost the person. They're not going to be interested because they don't think they fit it. It's about, so this bit of the finding, yeah, you have to find the patients, but once you have, you could lose them again if they can't find you. And it's not just about discovery. It's about making sure the information that is discovered is intelligible, clear, and encouraging and attractive enough. Next step in the process is the engaging with the patients. This is, they've put their hand up, say, I'm interested in taking part in the trial. So previously what we'd do, we'd probably get a site might phone the person, you might get emails, text messages. Nowadays, it might be an AI agent that phones the people or gets in touch with people. But on the other side of it, it's the patient or the site has to engage with the trial. Is the rationale compelling? Is there something interesting enough for me to want to? Taking part in clinical trials is an altruistic thing. There has to be a reason to do it rather than just sit watching TV. People have to think, okay, there's something here. There are different types of trials, obviously, where you're much more likely to have an engaged audience. Rare disease trials, for example, oncology trials, maybe. But for a lot of trials, there has to be a reason to take part, which surprisingly is often because people want to help advance medical science. Quite often as well, it's because they think they might get a better treatment than the one they're already on. They might want to get paid something. This is a bit more in the healthy volunteer trial where we are. But, it could be that there could be something about an incentive to taking part. The downside of that is if someone wants to take part in a trial, if they think it's too burdensome to do so, it again has to be a really strong reason to attract them to take part in it. So if your trial's got 18 site visits within the first 3 months, unless the site is next door, and it's not taking 3 hours worth of blood draws and all sorts of different tests, then you're unlikely to be attracting people that much. So what the AI can discover is, right, here's how I say, this is how I present the information. What we can do within the industry, think, oh, this is how the information comes across to other people. Maybe it means we should be changing what we do in the first place, or at least changing how we present it. So AI is very good at exposing whether it sounds attractive to participate in or not. And that communication with patients is a key. You've got to have it there. It's one of the things I'm always telling people, or clients of mine. You've got to engage with your audience. In reality, a lot of trials will often the only communication patients actually have with the trial is when they attend a site visit. So I'm often telling people, no, you've got to do something more than that. Keep them updated. Let's get people knowing the purpose of it, etc., etc. is the value of taking part clear? Again, you can try and explain this to people and get people to read things online or whatever. AI will synthesize that so quickly, and it'll be, if their questions will be, is it worth it for me? How long is it going to take, etc., etc. AI will come back with the answers, and if they're not attractive or encouraging, people aren't going to take part. Third pillar of this is the qualification stage. This is where you'd get screening. Now, previously it would be about pre-screening to find the patient come in, maybe an online landing page with screening questions. Again, probably someone phones up, you go through the same questions again, usually, to pre-screen the people. And then you've got to be screened once you've consented to be screened in the site itself. From this different way of looking at it, patients are screening the trial as much as the trial is screening the patients, because they can self-screen before they even get to that point where you're able to pre-screen them. If they look in Gemini and Gemini tells them, yeah, it's designed for people age 50 to 75 when they're 40, oh, fine, it's not for me. Well, if that's wrong information, they've self-selected themselves not to be qualified for it, and that information is not true. So that would, but even before you ever get anywhere near them as a site or a sponsor, they just won't be interested. The exclusions are exclusions overemphasized. Again, this AI can bring this up if people are looking for things. So, well, you can't take part if you've got X, if you do this, if you've blah 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 blah. You've taken these, you smoke, anything, all these kind of things that are usual exclusion criteria. If AI is highlighting that over other things, again, people will look at it and say, "Oh, don't like the look of that. I can't drink all the time or whatever." All these things. But again, it's pre-screen them out from their side, not yours. So it's discouragement that AI can do that the industry will never know about, because people are actually searching. AI's interpreted it, told them something. Oh, that's not for me. Move on. That's way before they get to the stage of consent, which would be fine. If they get through all that, then they get through the pre-screening, they come in, they want consent, they have consent to be screened, obviously, all those things. But we've all probably seen within the industry 40-page consent forms that, yes, you're supposed to read through them and people are supposed to agree all the time. I don't know how much the average patient understands them or actually agrees with what they're signing, but it has to happen. I agree, and it's a process. Consent is not just it's not a form; it's an ongoing process. Consent. You have to remind people every time. Yeah, encourage them. You're actually helping things. If this treatment, where you're helping whether treatment works or not, because you're helping us realize the treatment doesn't work. But it's a good way to keep people engaged. This consent ongoing. But what AI can do is it will look at it and realize, and people will realize, I've got to consent to this. And if this is what AI is showing to people, risk, 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 etc., it might put people off rather than, yes, you have to explain the risk, but you can then qualify that with other things. Obviously, you can't coerce people, but you can be encouraging. The trusted rationale behind the actual reason for the study is one I think people don't pay as much attention to as they should. Uh, People take part in a trial because they think, okay, it might help me or it might help someone else. Fine, but what about the science behind it? Do they know anything about that? They won't understand the science probably, but at least you can give them an overview of, because we think this is likely to affect this. That's why we're doing this trial. But we think this treatment might be better than whatever else is available at the moment. Being able to say that to people and people able to understand that is an encouraging thing. It helps people to realize, oh, good, I understand it now, I'll do it. So what AI might do is raise red flags to people or not give them enough information to want to take part. So again, they selected themselves out before they even get to a research site. Retaining patients in a trial. So this is one of the things I would always say to people running trials: communicate, keep people interested, give them information about the progress of what's happening. retaining people in a trial could be as simple as having a friendly receptionist at the door of the site. Because if people come into the site and they don't like the receptionist, or they don't get acknowledged, people don't say, "Oh, it's your birthday, happy birthday," or anything like that, can put people off. So it could be just as simple as that. Things you can do. What AI is uncovering, and what will uncover for people even before they get anywhere near that stage, is, well, what have I got to do? 18 site visits in 3 months? Not sure I fancy that. Now, again, you can't necessarily do much about that, but if you can offer the choice of, yes, there's 18 blood draws have to be taken. Do they have to be taken on site? 18, whatever it is. Do they have to actually be done within 3 months? I'm not saying you use the patient reaction necessarily to change protocol, but it can help to inform what is likely to be better for people, to encourage them to take part and stay in the trial. And I always encourage people to do this. If it's not, well, I'll get onto this in a minute, but even if it's you not looking at your own trial, if you look at someone else's from the viewpoint of, okay, well, would this encourage me to take part, and see what AI comes back with? And you can say, oh, well, maybe we should change what we're doing because that looks a bit scary and not attractive. Engaging the patients, keeping them motivated, keeping the clear communications, and the choice. Give people the choice of how they get communicated with. Just because you prefer email, they might prefer a phone call. Just because you prefer text message, they might prefer email. All these things, give people the choice of how they get ongoing communications, is another good way to encourage people to stay in the trial. I'm not saying AI will show that up, but if people ask, how will I be communicated with? And then all AI comes up with is, we'll be sent an email. I don't get the idea of that. I'd rather speak to someone face to face. So retaining patients isn't just about communicating, keeping them informed. It's about having an environment that patients would feel comfortable in, and AI can highlight whether that is likely to be the case or not. Looking at how things usually go, sort of mentioned earlier on. So the sites get selected, patients search for in a database, usually. Recruitment underperforms. I've often said that research sites should have enough people in their databases, enough patients to fill every trial. If they did, I wouldn't have a job, effectively. So this does not happen. Should happen, it doesn't. Maybe something to do with selecting different sites. I understand that as well. Generally, what tends to happen is I get brought in because recruitment is underperforming. Trial has to be rescued. One of the most frustrating things for me, and I say this to every client I work on when I get brought in at that stage, which is 90% of the time when I get brought in, there's nothing I'm doing now that I couldn't have done 6 months, 9 months, 12 months ago. Nothing we can put in place that you couldn't have already had in place. So next time you're running a trial, bring me in first, or at least set it up like this in the first place. Because it's frustrating to see that the rescue strategies, nothing magic about being in rescue. It's just, right, we're doing the same things we could do, stop you being in rescue. And that's what I always say to people. And I think AI can help to highlight some of these things now. If you actually, like I say, interrogate other trials, have a look at it from your perspective. Design the trial in the first place as though it's you or someone you love that's taking part in it, and see what the burden of participation would be. That's the easiest way to look at, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing 18 visits in 3 months, that sort of thing. So what IA can help you do is diagnose this before you get to that point. Where's the friction? What's unclear about it? What sort of things are patients going to ask? On the other side of it, what will the sites, if you're the sponsor, what are sites going to look at the burden on them? Say, oh, well, we could have 18. We're going to see someone 18 times in 3 months. Okay, I'm not sure about this. Sites will also be looking at all sorts of other things that they will uncover. And if it's not clear to them from their interrogation of AI, they'll look at it and think, I don't know if I fancy that because it looks like a lot of hassle for not very much reward. So the value of using AI here, it helps us to see the trial itself through the eyes of the participants, the people who are using it, but also the investigators, the study coordinators, etc. So we can use it to influence what we do and how we manage the trial ongoing. An interesting situation I've been involved with recently, when sites can only choose one trial, because I was working with a client who had a particular potential new treatment, and it's not rare, but it's not very likely that the sites will be able to manage more than one trial. Now, this client has a pivotal trial coming up later in the year. So does a big rival of theirs. So my client wanted to make sure that the sites chose them, especially the best ones, the key opinion leader sites, the ones they really wanted. They thought, right, we have to make sure these sites are running our trial, not our rival's trial, because otherwise it's going to reduce our ability to recruit patients, extend timelines, etc. So when people at sites are looking, they're going to look at this, which one sounds easier to run, easier to recruit for, is the sponsor credible? That's another thing. It's the often neglected this. People are going to search for, okay, I've never heard of XYZ Pharma. Let's have a look. No information about them. They think they might drill down further, or they might think startup, fine. But if you've got clear information readily available within AI, when the site's investigating and interrogating, it's a much easier path to get your trial chosen by that site. I did an AI visibility audit for this client. That's something I offer, where I do it to see what patients will be doing. I did this on the basis of what the sites might be looking at. So set up different profiles, different personas. What might a investigator from a site in Oregon be asking? My study coordinator for somewhere in Korea be talking about, etc., etc. Went through this quite detail with several of the main AI chat systems. And in our world, Perplexity is one that people are probably using as well, more scientific based AI system. Unfortunately, when we did the audit, my particular client did not come across very well compared to this rival. So that's what I was coming to them with, saying, this is going to hurt you for getting sites to run your trial in the future. They might say, we'll do this. I would if I was in their site. Which one should I use? Okay, we'll use them. So I recommended a few things what we can do here. This is what we can do to get your trial coming up better when sites are actually comparing. Clarifying the trial story. This is about what the reason behind it, what's going to happen, what the anticipated results are, the science behind it, who the people are who are involved. Some KOLs already, get them talking about it. Consistency. What AI will do is if you're consistently using the same sort of terminology, the same wording and the same messages, they'll synthesize that and use it. Whereas if it's different and disparate, they'll pick one or merge them together and it might come out the way you don't want it to come across. Explaining the burden honestly. Now, this is a key factor because there's nothing worse than having a site say, right, we'll operate your trial. And then they think, oh, I can't be bothered with this. And they just give up. Complete waste of money getting them activated in the first place, etc. So what you need to do is explain clearly in the first place, this is what you'll need to be doing. And if when the site's interrogating Perplexity or whatever, it can't find this information, they might think it's because it's so difficult, or they think, well, I might have look into this, but these other people have already told me, and I know I can do that, so I'll do them. Auditing against competing trials is what we were doing there in this particular case. So again, seeing what they had done to be able to look better in the eyes of the AI, see if we can do the same thing or do it better. Adding expert commentary, if you've got your chief medical officer can talk about the science behind it, some key opinion leaders, etc. Putting them in particular places. I don't want to get into specific detail, as in, oh, yeah, it's great if it's on Reddit or whatever like that, but there are certain little tactics you can use, but the fundamentals are better than that. If you've got clarity of messaging, clarity of rationale, clarity of understanding why it's happening, who it's for, the AI will then have the clarity, and so will the people actually interrogating AI. That's a niche bit in fairness about the sites themselves, but it is a very important one because you know sponsors of trials are they're very interested in that sort of thing. What we're really doing with AI when it comes to patient recruitment is we're not trying to build a new tool. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's not about, oh, brilliant, we can do hundreds of chart reviews quicker. These things are good. I agree. What I'm looking at it from the perspective of is these are real people using AI all the time. This is how they use it. So how can we use that rather than have to learn something new, buy in something new to improve what we do? And I think the irony of it, the irony of the fact that AI is technically innovative, is that what it does is actually brings us back to basics. It makes us realize that these fundamentals, finding people where they are, getting them to raise their hand and say, I'm interested, or qualifying them, making sure they fit the criteria, getting them to consent, keeping them in the trial. AI helps us to identify these things and bring it up. So you can see it from the beginning, where the problems are and what you might be able to fix. The biggest single thing, people ask me this fairly frequently, what's the one big thing you would suggest to someone, sponsor, who wants to make sure patients are recruited for their trial? And I always say, make sure there is somebody in your organization that is responsible for patient recruitment. Would be someone like me, an external person who's contracted to do it. Could be someone within the organization, be a CMO, whatever. It doesn't have to be a full-time role. It's just every time you're doing anything, get someone to put on the patient recruitment hat and look at it through that lens. So if you don't, patient recruitment will be forgotten about and it will be, oh, the CRO will take care of it. And we know what happens then, flow under recruitment, et cetera, rescue. So just make sure that every choice that is made, someone is thinking about how does this affect patient recruitment? How might it affect patient recruitment? If you don't have the expertise in-house, great. Get someone like me and come and help you with it. If you do, even better. Get them to think, right, oh yeah, hang on. We've just decided this 18 visits in 3 months. That might not be very appealing to people. Involve the patient sites and recruitment experts early. Again, getting the voice from a patient as to whether they would be interested in attending 18 visits in 3 months. Yeah, I think we can probably understand what most people will say to that. Get the site voice as well, because the sites are the people on the ground usually operating the trials. And if they say this isn't very practical, or we don't think we'll be able to do this many people in one day, etc., whatever it is, it can help you at the design stage. This is what we're really trying to underline for people. Build patient recruitment in from the outset, and you won't have as many problems in the future. So it's about reducing that friction, making sure the bottlenecks are wider and things don't stop and come to a halt. Explaining it, making it understandable and clear, so that everything you're doing, everyone understands it at every stage. It can be explained to a patient, it can be explained to a site, explained to a patient group. AI can help us uncover this by interrogating AI from the point of view of those different stakeholders. So I think I've pretty much gone through this already, but this is what I would say the key takeaways from my experience over 20 odd years of patient recruitment and building in now the extra layer of AI interrogation. We can see where the friction's likely to be with AI by doing it like that. Let's interrogate it in the mindset of someone else. Keep someone in charge of patient recruitment all the time. They are always looking at something as though, how is this going to affect patient recruitment, whatever it is? Could even be the choice of lab supplier. Is that going to affect patient recruitment? Usually the answer will be no. But sometimes you might think, well, hang on, I've heard something about them and it didn't, whatever it might be. Keep the trial clear to understand. So if it's clear if it's clear enough for AI to understand, it's clear enough for people to understand. So AI will synthesize it in the way you don't want if you haven't made it clear enough for them. The competitive positioning against potential rivals for a trial, for a company, is more important now, I would say, because it's much easier to find information about competing trials, competing sponsor companies than it was before. And it's also much easier not to find them because if all you're doing is using Perplexity, ChatGPT, and never going outside that, and they don't know who you are, or they don't know anything about your trial, you're probably already on the back foot with it. And my basic thing that I've always said to people is, rather than getting to rescue in the first place, design the trial with all these things I can implement when we get to rescue from the outset, and then you won't need going to rescue. So that's my overall take on how to hit your milestones by not having delays with patient recruitment, and how you can also utilize AI in this process to try and give you a bit more of an understanding of how other people are seeing your trial, your company, and that might be able to tell you about what you should be doing to make it better for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross.
Oh,
I don't know if you wanted to come off the presentation if you're
oh,
brave enough, Ross, or
let me go on. Nice. Yes. Oh, actually, I'll flick through to the next. Yeah. You go. Ah,
okay.
oh, I'm still on the
Don't
right.
worry. Okay. Oh, we still, so yeah. I'm not sure what bird that is, Ross, but
That's better. I don't know. It came up on it's Microsoft's Bird of the Day or something. So I don't know what it
rarely spotted species. There we go.
is.
But,
Yeah.
okay, well, thanks, Ross, of course, for fascinating presentation on patient recruitment. And I really like the piece around state of the fundamentals and fit, if you like,
Yeah.
the AI around those and use that to your advantage. But really opening the floor up first to any questions from the team.
There's one in the chat,
Oh yes,
Ross,
I saw
Oh.
yours.
which is a bit of a complicated one, but because
Oh, hello. Yeah.
now AI can kick the tires of everything very fast,
Yeah.
is it actually increasing patient participation because everybody can see everything versus making it slower because everybody can see everything and then they can discharge it? So are we getting
Yeah.
more volume but more fallout as a result of filtering by AI?
Yes and no. There's a perfect answer to that one. Yeah. The thing with AI, as we all know, the pace of change is so fast. So this is happening. People are using AI for this. But a year ago, they weren't using it so much. So there's not really that much evidence to look at and say, oh, well, has it changed it? Me, in my experience, I can look at this and say, yeah, when I've spoken to people about it as well, people are doing more of an assessment, but they're not quite at the stage where people are comparing, should I take part in this trial? Is there another one? Well, that's going to come. This will be the next thing. What people are doing is, should I take part in this trial? No. The problem is, because the patient recruitment was always such an issue in the first place, you will never know whether that person might have. So it's probably it there's no hard and fast figures on this, I would say. In fairness, this is more anecdotal because of the pace of change, but it's certainly something I've seen where inquiries have dropped in certain trials that I've been involved with, where people say got Facebook advertising. I have asked one or two people who have said yes, we saw an advert, and then we started to go on to, oh, I think it was the Cloud Copilot to find out more. One of them decided it was worth going for it, one of them didn't. So but the actual sponsor company, the person or the CRO or whoever is trying to get the patient in would never realize that it was actually happening. So the knock-on effect of that, we'll probably see it next year more or later this year because it's, there'll be a big like this, and then people will start to think, unless they've been watching this or talk to me, they'll start thinking, well, why have we got this slowdown? And yeah, there's uh, all sorts of things happening with AI as well that are, AI health assistants, AI. is integrated now with Facebook ads and all sorts of things. So you can do all sorts of things around it, but these are tech solutions. It is about the fundamentals, and it is about what's in it for me. People are interrogating AI to look at it to say, is this something I should be interested in or not? If I was making a prediction on what the actual stat will tell us, I would say it's probably speeding up the selection process for people internally, but slowing down for the actual sites or the sponsors.
Thanks.
Hi, Ross. Thank you very much for the presentation. Sorry, did I stop somebody from asking another question?
No, carry on.
Okay. So, no, thank you very much. I was wondering if you have experience, because you're describing that there is a patient, they see an advertisement about a trial, and then they use AI to understand whether they are interested or not in this trial, right? What is your experience with patients that are using directly AI like GPT or Claude to ask the question, is there any trial for me? I am this is my problem.
Good
And
point.
what's their experience?
Well, it's something I wrote about not that long ago, actually. This is something we want to try and get. Well, even taking a step back, what we're hoping for as an industry, what we're trying to prompt the AI systems to do is someone goes to ChatGPT and says, I've been diagnosed with psoriasis, something like that. ChatGPT comes back and says, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. And it will say, and there are clinical trials. We'd love that to happen. It's lack of awareness of clinical trials is still one of the biggest problems in the industry. People just do not know they exist. When people are looking for, is there a clinical trial? This is effectively the same thing I was doing with the site, who was exploring whether there was, their trial came up in comparison with their rival trial. So I've done this with lots of other sort of audits where I'm going, okay, if people find out about the trial, great. If they then go in and say, is there a trial? That is scary because the vast majority of trials do not get found. What's happening is World has a direct link with clinicaltrials.gov now. We all know how easy clinicaltrials.gov is to use. Well, it's probably slightly better at it than the average person, in fairness. But if I went now and did a trial, it's a trial nearby me for X, Y, Z, it would find one or two, but it wouldn't find them all by any means. And it wouldn't even realize you wanted to find them all unless you asked them for it. It's the way AI works, because it's looking at what they're likely to think. It doesn't actually think, but it's come to, okay, well, I'm not going to give them 200 trials they might take part in. It's if they've told me anything else in this chat, I'll give them something there. What tends to happen as well, interestingly, with ChatGPT, I've seen this happen half the time, but not the other half of the time. It'll come back and say, give me some more information about you, and we'll try and fit you in the criteria. But sometimes it'll just come back and say, here's the trials. Other times it'll come and say, I'll probably be able to find a lot of trials, but let's see if you fit the eligibility criteria. And that's the scary thing about why you need to have your information clear for AI to be able to synthesize, because it will summarize it or not. If it doesn't have any information, it won't summarize it, so you won't appear at all. If it has unclear information or wrong information, the example I gave is a true one, actually, where it wasn't ChatGPT, I think it was Gemini, came back, oh yeah, it's for 50 to 75, but actually it was at any 18 to 75. So someone who was 40 looking at it, it wouldn't have shown it to them. So yeah, I'm saying this is happening all the time, and it is. The world will catch up with it in this year, in the sense that it'll be just as normal as Googling. But yeah, it's going to have a real effect on the industry that I don't think people are realizing.
Steve?
Yeah, thanks.
That's it.
Hi, Ross.
Uh,
Wonderfully exciting and interesting talk as always. I just wanted to pick up on the point you just said there in terms of you need to have your information clear, and you talked about it in the talk as well. Are you saying that primarily that location for information is something like clinicaltrials.gov, or could it also be a company website that goes into other details about the trial, or both, or is there one that's a preference, or is it going to evolve and these artificial intelligence engines will try and look everywhere and scrape on the web for where the trial's mentioned?
They are scraping a lot of places. It reminds me of the very early days of SEO back in the late 90s, which I was involved with then, where it's about having clear information, but making sure there is, when Google came along, it wanted authority information. So having it in clinicaltrials.gov is a key, but we all know how awful that is. And we all know how having the information, they have templates, but you can put it into clinicaltrials.gov in a way that makes it better for AI. Exists inside. Having your own corporate web page is less authority than that. Intriguingly, if you have someone with a voice, a medic, some sort of key opinion leader, or even your own chief medical officer, who has an article, let's say on LinkedIn, that is counted as higher than a corporate web page. But these things are going to evolve and change, and it's not like the old school links where, oh, make sure you've got a Wikipedia link and you'll be higher in Google. It's not quite like that, because it's more about the messaging you're using and what you say. I don't know if it's clinicaltrials.gov, you could be in the European one, but certainly if you've got that sort of authority, if you've got it on clinicaltrials.gov, your own company webpage, somebody's written about it, the research site has got a page about it, all saying the same message.
That coherence you were saying before.
That's the bit that AI, because it comes across it in 8 different places with 8 different criteria. It's going to think, I don't know which one it is, so it'll pick and choose, or it'll mash them all together, or ignore them all.
So it's like an artificial intelligence optimization rather than a search engine optimization.
Exactly that. But unfortunately, they call it generative engine optimization, GEO, which is an awful place. But yeah, we won't get into that.
And if it is on a clinical trial web registry, which all non-phase have to be, is there a hierarchy, or like you just said, does it matter if it's on clinicaltrials.gov versus the new EU database, CETIS, for example?
I've not come across any difference in my audits that I've done, I'd have to say. But I think every one of them was on clinicaltrials.gov anyway. But it's pretty much impossible to back test that to find out. But I don't think it is, and I don't think it's as important as simply the clarity of the information and the standardization of the information.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I'm only asking because some of our clients, small European biotechs, trials in Europe, they sometimes think, I just want to avoid clinicaltrials.gov because it's a pain to operate.
Oh, well, I agree.
But they might be missing a trick if that then means that their trial is going to be less findable by Claude, for example. Because like you said, I'm aware that they've got a plugin for clinicaltrials.gov, for example.
The thing I would say there is, if they're in Europe and somebody in Europe is searching for it, Claude will default to searching for the European database anyway. Okay. However, if they're not necessarily in Europe, but they are just searching for, and it's only in the European one, it may well be they don't find it at all. If there's plenty of others somewhere else. So,
thanks very much.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions?
Ross, I have a question that's a little not directly related to the AI thing. And it's naive coming from a commercial person, and I think I know the answer, and I think I read someplace you're not supposed to do that. But the role of regulatory authorities, is it just truly a neutral role? I can only speak for the US. I know sponsors meet with regulatory authorities to get alignment on study objectives and design and key endpoints and all those kinds of things. But are there opportunities in the regulatory arena that get at recruitment and retention, how FDA approaches and gives sensitivity to inclusion and exclusion criteria? Are there access to government databases that, for sponsors? And, probably way off topic. I even think about things like an arbitrary p-value of 0.05 that goes into power calculations in trials, and
Yeah.
p-value of 0.08 doesn't get a product approved, but if you're telling me 92 out of 100 patients get better, I'm kind of like, I
Right.
think I'd be in for that. So I don't know,
Yeah.
long-winded answer, but I guess I'm just curious, is their role just neutrality, what they're doing today, or are there opportunities for the regulatory groups to maybe help or assist with this in some way?
There are indeed, and the regulatory. I mean, tangential groups as well. So government groups in health-related fields are often helpful for this sort of thing. Well, helpful. They often want to be able to provide information, but the regulatory authorities themselves, yeah, when you're talking to them, they're always trying to be helpful, but do they have enough information? I suspect not in reality, because when you talk to them, they do. They say, "Oh yeah, great. We know lots of things about whatever it may be you're asking." For patient recruitment specifically, in fact, you're better off talking to the sort of ethics committees or IRBs for that sort of thing, because they're the ones who are going to approve things in the first place. When you go in higher up to FDA level, um, I won't say they're a hindrance at all, and I think it doesn't hurt. I've never come across a specific instance where they have come up with a great idea, but they are available as a sounding board. And
Yeah.
certainly, I mean, for approval status, you can see sort of things. They always publish these things anyway. So they want to see the fact that patients have been involved in the trial design and you've got diversity and all those things. So again, you can probably request more information about that, but it's more, would that aid with patient recruitment? It would aid with getting the right patient, possibly, but not more patients necessarily. If that answers what you were getting at.
Yeah, I was just thinking out
I,
loud.
I think it's a good idea, and I do like the idea of being able to get those people in, because at the end of the day, they don't approve it, a complete waste of time and money, isn't it? So getting their input in the first place. I mean, I've always suggested as well get the payers involved here, because they're the ones who are going to decide eventually. Obviously, here we might be talking about NICE or the NHS kind of thing, but with insurance companies, yeah, let's see what they are more likely to accept.
I think your discussion about an audit is is the most thought-provoking thing for me, which is you check on Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot to find out what you sound like.
Yeah.
Because that's the key here, is that you might have various websites, you might have it on gov, or trials.gov, you might have it all these places and you think you've got clarity. Only when you go and step foot in Claude and say, tell me about this study, does it come back and discloses to you that everything you've said is unclear. And that's
Yes.
and so therefore you have to then retrofit to get the communication better, sharper, clearer, louder to win. So it's like going
Yeah.
in the playground, isn't it? Going to the playground and asking what people think of you.
It's,
Ultimately, you may be surprised what you find out.
you will, and I mean, it's a fun intellectual exercise, but a bit of a pain at the same time. But the other factor you've got to put in there is that you might go onto Claude and you've never been on it before or whatever, and it's just a blank slate. But if you have got it will know what your background is, etc., etc. It doesn't know, but it bases things and it keeps rereading stuff. I was working this out through earlier on today, through a particular thing, and yeah, so you have to go in with different personas. And it's not just about what Claude knows about you. What sort of question would a 45-year-old psoriasis man living in Manchester ask, who might qualify? But also, what about an 18-year-old in Kansas? What are they likely to ask? So, and it's all these things, and that's what AI quality of the question or the nature of the question will also affect what comes up. I mean, the audit thing is something I'm doing quite a bit of now, and it's I think it's well worth exploring further for any industry actually, but because we work in this industry, it's yeah.
Thank you.
So I was coming up to the hour. Just I thought I'd throw one in at the end, Ross. So just
Cool.
slightly bigger picture. You're speaking about awareness and building trust around clinical trials through AI. Do you think AI is fair? maybe to pharmaceutical companies and sponsoring studies, or anything in their algorithm? They must see a lot of noise around pharma companies. Do you think we're getting fair voice through AI?
Are we getting a fair voice through anything? I mean, that's the question, isn't it? So AI, it depends on what it's trained on. And there's plenty of stories about certainly image that AI gets trained on looking, not necessarily what we might think is a good thing, or the way they describe them. So is it fair? It's a fascinating thing, the way generative AI works. To give you one word in response to any question you put to it, it does over 1 trillion calculations to give you one word. That's why it's so power intensive, because it's looking back through all these neural networks and all sorts of things to come back with it. So it's what that is and what that information is that makes it fair or otherwise. There are people, even though crazily, because AI is a tech innovation, there are people being paid very, very little money in cheaper wage areas of the world to assess whether what AI comes up with is accurate or should be allowed to be put out there. So it's only fair based on what it knows in the internet, and obviously we know the internet can be a bit of a toxic place. But it's only within the last 2 years that most AI systems had internet scraping built in anyway. So is it fair? I don't think it has a bias to Pfizer or against biotech companies, but it's in the same way that as a human being, you might have a view of Pfizer or a small biotech. I know which ones I prefer, but that's a personal opinion. AI doesn't have personal preference, but it does have a range of viewpoints, and you can change it. Whether it's fair or not, you could if you think it's not fair, you can go back and say, well, what about this? And it will almost certainly agree with you. That's what they tend to do. But it's that's that initial interrogation bit. Is it fair? I mean, I think that's a philosophical point more than one I can actually answer from my experience of it.
Thank you, Ross, for attempt at last question at least. So, well, thanks again, everybody. We have recorded this and we'll distribute it again, so you'll get to see it. But please share again with friends and colleagues, anybody who might be interested. I was going to say hello to Goang as well. We're not spoken of it. So hi, Goang.
I came to see Ross because I was talking to him about this the other day, and he said, I'm doing this. I said, right, I'm going to come.
Very good. So thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you soon. Anybody interested or know anybody that's interested in speaking at one of the webinars, do please let me know, and we'll set up as soon as possible. But on that, thank you, Ross. See you all soon, very soon, I hope.
Cheers, Ross.
Thanks
Cheers,
very much.
Nigel.
Thank you.
Right.